The name Tudor has an almost mythical ring to it. It immediately brings to mind stories of Henry VIII and his 6 wives, the long and successful government of Elizabeth I, or the dramatic events of Bloody Mary's reign. But how did it all begin? Anyone interested in the history of the Tudors usually knows that it all started with a Welshman called Owen, who married the Dowager Queen Catherine of Valois. Often, not much more is known. Many people do not know that Tudor was actually the first name of his grandfather. And this is the most boring story from the life of the progenitor of the Tudor Dynasty. It was characterized by scandals, but also by astonishing successes. It almost couldn't end any other way than it did, dramatically. Owen was born around the year 1400. The exact date of birth cannot be determined as his mother was on the run. It is unclear whether his father, whose name I am displaying here but not even try to pronounce it, was there. To understand the name, AP means son of. Presumably Owen was born in the absence of his father. This was connected to the Welsh rebellion of Owen Glendower. The latter had himself proclaimed Prince of Wales on February 16, 1400. Tudor's family, which was directly descended from King Caedrod, was related to him. Tudor's father and uncle therefore fought alongside Glendower against the two Lancaster kings, Henry IV and Henry V. Tudor's father had previously been Executor of Anglesey in 1392 and steward to the Bishop of Bangor. Shortly before Tudor's birth, his father was also accused of murdering a man, which is why he was persecuted as well. This too suggests that he was absent when Owen Tudor was born to his mother Margaret. Participation in the rebellion not only cost some family members their lives and all the men of the house their property, their name was associated with the stigma of rebellion seemingly forever. Tudor was therefore condemned to a life as a political outsider. This may have been one of the reasons why he was only too happy to bear an English name and eventually became Owen Tudor via the intermediate step of Owen Tudor. Sorry for the butchering, but I really wanted to try to name this special intermediate name only one time, and I thought it would be funny to keep it in the video. However, it is not certain when the name change exactly happened. Presumably he was still known as Owen Meredith in 1421. At least a man of this name fought in Henry V Welsh regiment at Agincourt in France and distinguished himself through particular bravery. This earned him the great honor of becoming one of the king's personal esquires. This meant that Owen was one of the monarch's shield bearers. This valiant service and the associated distinction, possibly at the age of just 15, would also explain how Owen, who came from a family that had not only been politically scorched, but had mainly provided administrators, priests and soldiers in the past generations, gained access to the royal court. We also find Owen Meredith in France in 1421, then under the command of Sir Walter Hungerford, who was later to be steward in the household of Henry VI. There are many prosaic stories about the first meeting between Owen and Catherine. None is entirely plausible, but neither are they entirely impossible. For example, Tudor is said to have slipped while dancing and landed on the lap of his future bride, who was, of course, still married to Henry V at the time. According to another story, Catherine saw Owen naked while bathing, and the sight is said to have captivated her so much that she could not let go of him, even though he was clearly below her in status. Perhaps it was much less dramatic. Owen and Catherine were about the same age and came from a different country to England. They therefore had something in common and became friends. This is supported by the fact that Owen remained in Catherine's household after the death of her first husband, but there were very loud rumors that the Queen Dowager had a relationship with Edmund Beaufort and was hoping to marry him. The marriage of the king's mother to Beaufort eventually even occupied Parliament. In 1427, it passed a law prohibiting the widows of kings from remarrying unless a special license was granted by an adult king. The regulation was primarily directed against marriages with Englishmen and made it impossible for Catherine to marry the man of her choice. There was a fear that the new husband would have too much access to the king through his wife, which would give him too much power. But Catherine, who as a widow owned a wealth of land and was therefore highly sought after, did not want to wait at least 10 years for a new husband. She therefore secretly married Owen Tudor in 1431, but as long as she lived, the marriage was never officially recognized and was merely gossip. It is not known when the affair with Beaufort ended, if it did. However, there were rumors that the couple's first son, Edmund Tudor, bore the name of the former lover because he was, in fact, the father. But this is hardly realistic. Catherine fathered 6 more children with Owen, 3 sons and 3 daughters, alongside Edmund, who married and impregnated Margaret Beaufort. Jasper Tudor was of particular importance. He became a father figure to Edmund's and Margaret's son Henry Tudor. Owen also fathered an illegitimate son named David Owen after Catherine's death. Catherine fell seriously ill in 1436 and made her will on January 1st, 1437. She stipulated that the king would be the sole executor of her last will and testament. Owen and his children thus no longer had any protection against their enemies after the former queen died on January 3rd, 1437. Humphrey, Duke of Gloucester, had long been an enemy of the Welshmen, even though he was now officially recognized by Parliament as a loyal Englishman. Gloucester saw his hour had come and had Owen arrested for the unauthorized marriage. Henry VI is said to have been extremely angry about the marriage. Today it is considered more realistic that the youthful monarch was not at all interested in his mother's second husband. Owen was able to persuade him to let him go. As a side note, Owen first sought protection in the sanctuary of Westminster Abbey, using a strategy that was to be copied several times during the Wars of the Roses. Owen was immediately arrested again in Wales on flimsy grounds, and the crown confiscated all his property. Tudor was imprisoned in the infamous Newgate prison, which was located at the city gate that gave the prison its name. It was built in 1198 and renovated in the 1420s. This was the place where some of the most serious criminals were locked up when they had an appointment with the executioner. The guards were corrupt. Anyone who wanted candles or food had to bribe them. Tudor only had the company of a servant and a chaplain. However, this was not a problem. After a short imprisonment, he was able to escape. It is still not entirely clear how this happened. The common theory is that politically influential people arranged for this discreet release. This could refer to the king, who held his half-brothers, Owen's son, in high esteem, married them off advantageously, and otherwise privileged them as well. Another possibility is that Owen bribed his guards and thus gained his freedom. Whatever was true, Tudor did not have to fear being imprisoned again. After his release, Owen Tudor was loyal to his stepson Henry VI and served as an army commander in the Wars of the Roses. This was to cost him his life. On February 2nd or 3rd, 1461, the Lancaster army met the Yorkist forces led by the future Edward IV at the Battle of Mortimer's Cross. Fighting alongside Owen was his son Jasper. The outcome of the battle was a disaster for the Lancastrian army. They suffered a crushing defeat and had to endure heavy losses. Numerous commanders were taken prisoner, including Owen Tudor. His son Jasper was able to escape. Owen and the other important prisoners were taken to Hereford, where they were beheaded on Edward's orders. Only a few weeks earlier, his father, Richard of York, had made the same fate. The Yorkists took revenge, unaware that the descendants of one of those killed what shaped the fate of England.